Hello everybody, welcome to this video covering Extract 4 of the F585 Stimulus Material 2016. Key thing, before we go through the extract, is to remember what's on the side here. All potential questions that are going to come from Extract 4 I've covered in other videos in this playlist, so go and check those out at the end of this video to see what you need to do in terms of answering questions from this extract. All the theory in the extract has been covered in previous videos that I've made. The links to those videos are in the description box down below, so check those out if you need refreshing on some of this theory. Your job when revising is to get into the head of the examiner. You've gone through the extract many times in school, I'm sure, with your teacher. So you probably know the extract well, but understanding how the extract is written and why it's written that way will give you signals and clues as to what kind of questions will come up. So that's important for you to do. That's what I'm going to focus on in this video. And lastly, you need to make sure that everything in this extract you understand. All the key terms, all the key economic theory. You need to know inside out if you're going to succeed in the exam. Alright? Everything you need to know I've written on the side here. These are the key bits of content, key bits of economics that you need to learn from Extract 4. So let's get started. Let's get started and look at the title of the extract. You see, the title is Migration and Remittances. Again, the way the title is gives you big clues as to what is going to be questioned. You're going to get a question on remittances, right? That is the focus of this entire extract. Right, which is why I've put it here as number 1. And the link here, guys, is to development. The role of remittances in promoting development. So you need to learn the pros and cons of remittances, especially in reducing poverty and promoting economic development. Watch my video on that to make sure that you're really clear on that. All right. Chances are this is going to be your comment question. Comment on the role of remittances or the significance of remittances in reducing poverty and promoting economic development in developing countries. So knowing that is key. All right. As well as in the previous video, you need to make sure therefore that you know economic development perfectly and all the related material that's in Greek you need to learn perfectly. I've got a large playlist covering that which you can follow. The first paragraph focuses on the significance of remittances generally in terms of the amount of money that's sent home, in terms of the number of people that work outside their home country, etc. So you can see here that it says there has been an increase in the surge of international finance flows to both developed and developing countries, and one of these flows, remittances, has become increasingly important for developing countries. So two things to bear in mind there. One, international flows of finance. I've written it down here. You need to learn that there are 4 key types. The 4 are written in the extract there, but you need to understand what they actually represent. What are they? That's what you need to understand. One of these is remittances, and it's become increasingly important for developing economies. And there are a few stats afterwards that tell you an estimated 232 million people worked outside their home country in 2013. Over $400 billion US dollars of remittances were received by developing countries in 2013, far outweighing the amount received through ODA. Official development assistance, that's basically foreign aid. So 400 billion, that's 4 times more than foreign aid in 2013. Significant, the importance of remittances. Great to use in a judgment, for example, on a comment on a question. It says remittances accounted for more than 10% of GDP in developing countries. So the raw value of remittances in developing countries, averaging around 10% of GDP for these countries. Incredible, really. The chart below just makes that clear, but visually. So if you see remittances there as the solid black line, you see how it's actually second only to FDI. FDI is the most important for these developing countries in terms of raw value. But remittances are much more than ODA, which is the least important, and even more important than debt and portfolio investment sources of financial flow. So very important, it tells you that. And what it also tells you, this chart, is how stable remittance income is. If you look in the chart between 2006 to 2010, you'll see the majority of the other international flows of finance saw reductions, significant reductions in the amount of finance coming in through these forms, whereas remittances saw only a tiny drop, i.e. it's very stable, and the trend is significantly increasing. Okay, so this chart just proves how important remittances are. as a source of finance themselves, but for developing countries too. The next paragraph is very interesting, very interesting. It's a very brief overview, very brief overview of the benefits and costs of remittances. And you can see, just an example here, it's suggested that migration and remittances, second sentence, can be significant in reducing poverty and increasing development. How vague is that? That's because you're going to be asked a question on it. However, to set against this is the impact of the loss of skilled labour, full stop. Right? And then it says the World Bank has said that smaller developing countries have the highest rates of skilled emigration. Almost all doctors trained in Grenada, Dominica and Ghana, for example, now live and work abroad. So even that is very vague. The impact of that has not been developed, nor has the beneficial impact of remittances in reducing poverty and increasing development. It's just been stated. That's because you're going to have to do that. Comment question, on the one hand, here's how remittance income can be used to reduce poverty and promote development. On the other hand, here are some concerns of relying on remittance income for development progress to take place. Okay, so brief paragraph, written that way because they're going to ask you a more detailed question on it. The next chart is interesting again, very useful to use this chart in a judgment to tell you why remittances are so important. On the left, you see simply quantity values, right? The amount of remittance income coming into various countries. And you see it's the larger developing countries that see the greatest amount of remittance income coming into them, i.e. India, China. So that tells you that the flows, the actual remittance flows, are huge sums. 70 billion US dollars in India, 64 billion US dollars in China. But even in countries like the Philippines, Mexico, these are big sums, 28 billion, 25 billion dollars respectively. Big sums. But it's the smallest countries, the smallest developing countries that benefit as a percent of GDP, remittance income sent. As a percent of GDP, it's the smallest nations who see the greatest benefit from remittances, like Tajikistan, Nepal, Kyrgyzstan, Moldova, Tonga. All these very small countries benefit the most as a percent of GDP. Great to use for evaluation in terms of the significance of remittance income and for a judgment talking about why they are very significant. That's what these two charts show, that all developing countries benefit, they all do. The larger the developing nation, the greater the flow of finance in raw value, but it's the smaller nations that benefit as a percent of their GDP with respect to remittance income. So the last thing I want to focus on here in terms of what you need to know is the second bit. It's not been mentioned in that much detail, but foreign aid, ODA they call it, official development assistance they call it in the extract, has been mentioned briefly, but not in a huge amount of detail. So because it's been mentioned, you need to know everything to do with it. What is foreign aid? Why could it be useful in promoting development? What are the negatives as well? Because who knows, you might get a comparison comment question, comparing remittances to foreign aid in promoting development and alleviating poverty. So making sure you're aware of all the theory relating to foreign aid and development is important too. That brings us to an end to this extract, guys. I'm going to finish by again stressing that I've made a big guide to potential questions that might come up from the extract material this year in your global exam, and I've written loads of model answers for all the potential questions that are likely to come up. The links to getting that guide, is in the description box to this video down below. So click on the links, get the guide. That is a sure way of you getting maximum marks in this exam and hitting exam success. So get the guide, it's definitely worth it, and you will succeed, guaranteed you will succeed if you get this guide, I'm sure you will. Thanks very much for watching this video, guys. I'll see you all in the next one.